Hey guys, what's up? Hope you're all doing good today, and just like to welcome everybody to the channel. Welcome everybody. If you're the first time viewer, welcome. If you guys are a hardcore fan, welcome. If you're one of the haters out there, welcome. Just thanks for tuning in. Much appreciated here. Got a little bit of everything out there. You know, every time that you come out with an opinion, it doesn't matter what it is, you're going to get a range of replies from it. So I get a little bit of everything out here. But like I said, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'm hoping you guys are enjoying what I'm putting out here. So anyway, today I'm going to get back to a continuation of our series. I've got a 3-part series I'm going to do on some tips and secrets about how to effectively fight and land the fish once you get them hooked. And like I said before, if you guys saw my first video on the power fishing way to land a fish and fight a fish, if you missed that, I'll include the link in the description here and you can check it out. But I covered, a little bit about the, single hook power type lures. And today I'm going to talk about the crankbaits. Not just crankbaits, basically treble hook lures, which can be crankbaits, jerk baits, top waters, that type of stuff. Some swim baits, even like that. So it sort of there's some similarities and differences too that we're going to talk about and have a little discussion. But hey, just one more thing, couple of little housekeeping tips here. Like I said, if anything that I'm mentioning here along the channel, guys, as far as if you guys are interested in ordering any of the stuff I'm talking about, I'll include the Taco Warehouse link from Fish the Moment. And if you guys use that link, it really helps Johnny and I out a lot. Getting a little small percentage of that profit helps us, take the time to do these videos. And also next Thursday, Johnny has his next virtual seminar, his next electronics virtual seminar. And on the 15th, Johnny and I also have our next virtual seminar on post-spawn patterns. So you can sign up for those at fishthemoment.com. It's a good time. You guys will have a good time at it, I promise you. So anyway, let's have a talk about a little bit of discussion here on treble hook lures and how to fight the fish. And like I said, there are some similarities, and I'm going to sort of go over those similarities first, and try to tell you a little bit of differences. Again, you have a lot of variables when you're talking about how to fight a fish. Like we talked about in the first one, you've got the line size you're using, you've got the type of hooks you're using, the type of baits you're using, you've got the cover that the fish is in, you got the size of the fish, you got the personality of each fish is different. And one of the things I'd like to reiterate here when you're basically learning the whole art form of fighting a fish is that every fish is different. And I can't stress this enough. Every fish moves different based upon a lot of different factors. The fish will move based upon water temperature, how deep a water it's in, if there's current, the type of fish, the species. There's a lot to it, man. This is one of those topics where there's so many aspects of it to it that get oversimplified that you can't even hardly cover them all in just this time. But basically what I'm saying is you have to learn to read each fish the way it moves. And like we talked about in the first video a little bit, the first thing you want to remember is once you hook a fish on a treble hook lure, crankbait, treble hook, whatever, topwater, whatever, it doesn't matter if you're using 10-pound test line or 20-pound test line. You have got to maximize the control that you have over that fish initially. And what I mean by that is when you set the hook on that fish, you should be putting as much pressure as you can on that fish to come to the boat that the line size that you're using allows until that fish makes a move in the other direction. And the similarity between the power bait and the treble hooks and everything is the same, is when you're fighting that fish and it's coming to the boat, which is the critical time, because usually what happens a lot of times, you can get that fish to come to the boat pretty quick before it actually maybe sees the boat or actually realizes it's hooked and starts fighting in other directions. Always try with the crankbait or the lipless crankbait, jerkbait, whatever, to keep that fish moving in the same direction. Don't ever reverse directions on it like that. The only time that I will reverse directions, and this is off the subject a little bit, but the one time you do want to reverse directions, say for example you're using a jerkbait and the fish jumps up by the boat and you can see that fish has got one barb in its mouth and the whole rest of the bait's out of its mouth. At that point, sometimes I will reverse it, and what I'll do is I'll try to do a figure 8 in the water to try to get another set of trebles to catch that fish on the side of its head or whatever, just to get some more trebles. That's a highly effective way to not lose fish. It takes a lot of practice. I mean, it's something that's taken me years to perfect, but on all my crankbaits or whatever, if I see that fish jump and it's got one barb in it, I always, and the fish is at the boat, I always try to do a circle 8 and try to get another hook in that fish. It works pretty good. But anyway, first thing to remember, keep that fish coming to the boat the same direction. The next thing you want to remember is usually what happens is you have to determine a lot of different other factors. You got to, right off the bat, you got to figure how big the size of the fish is. If the fish is sorry for the little glitch there, guys. I got a phone call and forgot to put my phone on airplane mode. So anyway, back to it here. Thing you got to remember right off the bat is determine the size of the fish. If the fish is like a 12-incher or up to like a 1.5 pound, 1.75 pounds fish, most of the time in that situation, unless I'm fishing like a bait on really light line, which is a spinning rod application we'll get into later. I'm talking about mainly about bait casters here. Most of the time on a smaller fish like that, I will try to swing that fish in the boat. If I got the momentum on it, I'll definitely try to swing it in, unless I just really feel it skin hooked or something like that. So the first thing you have to determine is the size of the fish. If the fish that you're talking about is above a 3-pound class fish, that type of thing, a lot of it is determined by the type of bait you're using. If you're throwing, like, say, for example, a big balsa bait, like a big square bill that's got like 2 number 1/0 hooks on it, something like that, or like a big crankbait that's got 2 number 1 hooks on it like that. Sometimes you can swing those fish in the boat, up to like 3 pounds or so on that. But the thing that my rule of thumb is on any type of crankbait fish or topwater or jerkbait fish, if I've got a fish over 3 pounds, I never ever swing it in, ever, because there's just too many things that can go wrong. There's the bait you can't read a lot of times how good it's hooked. You got the variable of just the hooks pulling out so much easier. So the good rule of thing I'll remember as far as fighting a fish is never try to swing a 3-pound plus class fish on a treble hook, for the most part, like that. So the thing that you have to remember is, like, if you have one of those better fish on, those 3-pound plus fish, and you follow sort of the advice I give you and you don't try to swing those fish over, the next thing you have to remember is what to do with those fish when they're at the boat and when they're still fighting, and what happens when you get them to the boat. So the first thing, like I said, always remember, keep that fish coming in the same direction. If for some reason it starts to switch direction or anything like that, try to go with that flow a little bit. Try to go with the flow of the direction of the fish. And a lot of times on a crankbait, the fish usually has 1 or 2 hard runs. Any fish 3 pounds and up, it'll usually pull pretty hard for like 2 different times, especially if you got a 4-pound plus class fish. What you need to practice, and this is one of the most important tips I can give you in fighting a fish on a treble hook lure on a bait caster outfit, is learn to thumb your reel. So what do you want to do? Drags are basically worthless on a crankbait, or drag. Most of the time, a bait caster drag, I never use it. In fact, I can only think of one time in my entire career when I actually used a drag on a bait caster, and it was simply out of accident because it happened so quick on a 10-pound bass. But most of the time what happens is, if I'm fighting the fish and I've got it to the boat and I can see it's a good fish, I will push the release on my thumb bar and I'll hold the spool with my thumb, because I'm anticipating that hard run. And if that fish makes that hard run, I can simply feather the spool with my fingertip like that, and I can keep just as much pressure as I want or don't want on the fish. So remember this, guys. This is a huge tip I'm giving you here, is when you get that fish close to the boat like that and that fish is still fairly green, push that thumb bar and control that fish with the thumb bar. Click the line in, or click the gear in gear when you can take up slack. But anytime that fish starts to put pressure on it, as a safety precaution, push that thumb bar in and fight that fish with your thumb pressed against the spool of the line. It's just you're gonna save so many more fish on a treble hook crankbait. So the next thing you have to remember, if you're not gonna lip it, is the correct way to land the fish. The best way to land the fish, as far as after you've fought it on a treble hook bait, is to simply, if you got a net, if you can use a net in a tournament, go ahead and net it. But if you don't have a net, get back in the driver's seat or in the passenger seat, which is the lowest part of the boat. Get the fish to the surface as quick as you can. Reach down with a rod to where you got like the last 3 foot of it in your hand. Get it down there, and if the fish is there, reach down and belly land that fish if possible. Don't even try to get anywhere near those hooks. If you can get your hand around the belly of that fish and get that fish in the boat, you can do it so much quicker than trying to fight for its mouth. If the fish's mouth is open and you can get to it, fine. But really try to work and perfect the art of belly landing those fish. Also, another thing is, if that fish is hooked fairly decent and you can see it, another way to get good control of the fish is, once you have that fish to the boat, actually grab your line if you got just a couple feet out, and put loose pressure on that line, because you don't want to grab it so hard if the fish pulls that it's in your line. But you can direct the direction of that fish to the boat so much more efficiently if you grab that line and get your hand underneath the belly. And this is something that takes practice, because when you're dealing with grabbing line, it's a risky proposition, because you don't have any give, you don't have any forgiveness. So you've got a split second to do this. But what happens is, there's a split second of time there where you can manipulate that fish by grabbing the line, if you can get it right there. And it's a lot. It takes practice. It's just a matter of feel, but it definitely is a lot better. So another thing to consider too is, when you're fighting that fish, the big consideration, besides reading the movement of that fish and the direction of that fish, is how much pressure you can put on that fish when you're fighting it. And the amount of pressure that you put on that fish is directly related to your line size and the type of hooks you're using. If you're using some light wire hooks that are fairly small, and you're using, say you're cranking with 10-pound test line, you obviously can't put as much pressure on that fish, because you don't have the bite gap with a small hook. I'm not really concerned about straightening the hook out, because most hooks that I use, like the Gamakatsu G Finesse, which I use 98% of the time on all my treble hooks lures, it's a stiff hook, it's not going to straighten out. But still, you got a small bite gap on the smaller baits if you're using like a number 6 or number 5 hook. So if that isn't a consideration, and the fact that you don't know how good that fish is hooked in, that's when you have to just take your time with those fish and wear them out. And when you're cranking, unless you're power cranking, like I said, with big square bills, big heavy line, don't get in a big hurry to get these fish in with the crankbait. If you guys ever watch David Fritz, the crankbait master, it takes him forever to get a fish in the boat. He rarely ever loses them. And it's the same with jerkbait fishing. I do the same thing. It's the same with jerkbaits, same with topwaters, whatever. I let the hook size and the line size dictate how much pressure that I put on the fish. So anyway, that's just a few tips, to talk about on the cranking, on the treble hook lures, just to reiterate, keep that fish moving in the same direction all the time as much as you can. The amount of pressure that you put on your fish is totally dependent upon your line size and the size of hook that you're using. That's just a matter of getting a feel about that. And thirdly is landing that fish. And when you're getting that fish to the boat, you can swing those fish in that are under 2 pounds, but get in the habit, guys. If you get a 3-pound plus class fish, just stop swinging them. Just reach down there and perfect your landing technique, whether it be the belly landing technique, whether it be lipping it by the mouth, whether it be using your rod to guide the fish in, or the line. It just takes practice. And this is one of the things you can do. I mean, one piece of advice I'd give you when you guys are just fun fishing, or if you're in a practice for a tournament, don't ever swing any fish. Take the time to learn how to reach down there and get them by the belly and get them by the gills. I mean, it's an art form within itself to grabbing fish like that. It's just a matter of practicing. So anyway, that's today's tip. Treble hook lures, how to fight them and land them. We'll be back probably next day or so. I'll finish up the series with spinning rod tactics, finesse tactics on how to fight the fish. So anyway, guys, thanks for joining in. Appreciate it. If you like the video, hit that like button, and please subscribe if you haven't. See y'all later. See you.